The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Well, it's the off season, not too long after the last game, but still the off season. I was trying to limit Gators Breakdown to one episode a week during the off season until next fall rolls around. But of course, as the saying goes, it's never a dull moment in Gator Nation. Busy week for the Gators. Busy last few days for the Gators, going back to the Peach Bowl to now. Declarations have started rolling in. Players coming to Florida, leaving Florida, returning to Florida, all that stuff in the last week or so. So some commitments to go along with that. Just can't wait until I was going to record on Tuesday, but we'll still do that episode with Will Miles. But with all the news going around, had to get another episode out while all the news was flowing in, and I know you guys wanted to hear Gators Breakdown, my thoughts, and all that good stuff that comes along with a bevy of news. So yeah, we'll get to it. It was just a flurry of action, especially on Saturday with the Chris Steele announcement and all the American games, and then pretty much it had to be planned the way it happened, with the news of Steele announcing, and then not too long after that, the wave of guys saying they're going to come back to Florida. We'll get into all that coming up here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. But before we do, remember, you can find Gators Breakdown on news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown. There you'll find all the Gators Breakdown episodes, as well as articles from the News for Jax sports team. Also, catch us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Spotify. And using those services, please share, rate, and review the show. Hey, look, if you're checking us out on YouTube right now, short notice, I know, really playing this episode, but for you guys joining us live, and of course, when we get this out in podcast form, thank you very much. Also, follow us on social media, on Twitter and Facebook at Gators Breakdown. So let's start with the recruiting side of it. Of course, and the bigger name here, we'll start with Chris Steele, who announced at the U.S. Army All-American game. And this was one, look, guys, we knew we felt good about it coming in. A lot of hints that, a lot of people were throwing out there that Steele will be a Gator. It did end up, of course, if you followed it, we knew he was going to sign out of school during the early signing period. He did that, but wasn't going to announce until the All-Star game. And the announcement was for our Florida Gators, Chris Steele, 6'1", 185-pound cornerback from Bellflower, California, four-star cornerback, 40th ranked player in the nation, fifth ranked cornerback. Here's a scouting report from 24/7 Sports. Quote, lean but strong frame with plenty of room to fill out, carries 190 pounds with ease, and should play at 210 at the college level without losing any of his athleticism. A very physical press corner who plays with an edge to his game, will bully opposing receivers at the line of scrimmage, and shows the speed to turn and run with an athletic receiver as well. Strong in run support. Hey, we saw that in the game. Was in there for a tackle with Trey Sanders' first run. But yeah, here he goes. Strong in run support, and will lay out an opposing receiver or running back. A highly intelligent player who could grow into a safety in college because his football IQ, frame, and physicality. Tremendous work ethic off the field, and driven to not be just good, but a great player. Can improve his hips, change of direction, and ball skills, but should play early at the college level. Impact upper tier Power 5 starter and future NFL draft pick. That's the scouting report from 24/7 Sports. A lot of accolades there, a lot of positive mentioning there from guys who scout it and look at their game. And look, if you're going to be an SEC corner, and still mention it, he wants to play in the SEC. And he mentioned it when he was announcing for Florida that he wanted to go to the real DBU, and that's why he chose the Gators. You're going to have to be a physical corner to play the type of defense Todd Grantham wants to play. Used to playing in the SEC, you've got to be a physical corner in the SEC. Teams like to run with power. You're going to have to stick your head in there every once in a while and get in there. You're going to have to play physical with the big body receivers that you see in the SEC as well. And Chris Steele looks to make that track all the way across country and be a Gator and play that physical brand of football that's needed in the SEC. I did find it interesting. They did mention could play safety as well. I don't know if it'll ever translate there. We'll see how it works out. You know, he mentioned. I know he's mentioned before he wants to play corner, but Florida finds themselves in a bit of an issue maybe a year or two down the road. I can see still there, but I think he starts out as a cornerback when he comes early enrollee, already on the Gators campus, and ready to start his Gator career. He recorded 32 total tackles, 2 blocked field goals, and 1 interception during his senior season, finishing his career with 135 total tackles. Now let's go back to last Thursday for the Under Armour All-American game, and a bit of a surprise when wide receiver R.J. Henderson commits to the Gators. I got word that afternoon at about 5 o'clock. Keep an eye on this one. We're hearing Gators. So, of course, all the crystal balls were flowing in for Florida State. All said and done, it was a dagger to the Seminoles when R.J. Henderson on live TV, on ESPN, surprises everybody and picks the Gators. 6'1", 183-pound, 4-star wide receiver, 126th player in the nation, 22nd ranked wide receiver in the nation, and the 19th ranked player in the state of Texas. 4.63 40-yard dash. Going back to 24/7 Sports and their evaluation of R.J. Henderson, possesses above average height and length, owns a lean, athletic build that should be able to fit more weight and bulk at the college level, has provided enormous production in the Houston area, competing in Texas' largest high school classification. Plays with impressive receiver instincts and awareness, knows how to find and run the open space, cognizant of boundary, and a good toe tapper when required. Shows impressive high-pointing ability thanks to timing and body control, possesses ability to move around the formation in multiple receiver sets, can provide vertical threat while also a consistent change-moving presence, above average run after the catch ability. While the frame is better than average, it is a bit narrow and might limit physical potential. Above average athleticism from a testing standpoint, but can improve overall explosiveness. Improved fluidity will help ability to get open in close quarters versus college defenders. Potential NFL draft pick. So it looks like this is a receiver that Florida will be able to use in a multitude of ways. If they can put some more weight on him, Dan Mullen's going to ask these receivers to block. So he's going to have to put some more weight on there. And they said he has a frame to do it there to be able to block in this Dan Mullen offense. But a guy that you look to move around in the formation, and you could probably use him if you need a deep threat. He can do that. If you need to go pick up an important first down on 3rd and 4, he can run the route to get you that too. So big time pickup there. R.J. Henderson, as I said, a big surprise to get him away from the Seminoles when everything was leaning towards that way. Might be we'll have to look out for some grades stuff there. May be an issue, may not be an issue. Kind of unclear on that. So coming from Texas, we'll see how the grades turn out there. But some people not necessarily worried because of history. Florida, especially if he visits. If he visits, then it's really, really good sign. Florida doesn't necessarily let you visit. They don't think they can get you in there. So look for his visit to come up soon. And hopefully when it's looks like January 11th maybe, or the next Saturday here coming up, or the next weekend, the next visit weekend. And if they can get him in there, look for Florida to try and shut down that recruitment, not let him take a visit to Florida State, and kind of close it down here. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of positivity in the recruiting world for the Gators after early signing day there. So picking up some big-time commitments. And after getting Steele and Henderson, the Gators received commitments from the 40th ranked and the 126th ranked player, respectively. Steele was the 40th ranked player in the country, and R.J. Henderson was the 126th ranked player, respectively. 2 high-end players there. And you go and look at Chris Steele. He is the highest ranked Florida player Florida has gotten since Antonius Clayton, when he was the 27th ranked player, and Tyree Cleveland, the 34th ranked player, back in 2016. So Steele, the 40th ranked player in 24/7 Sports Composite, and the highest since 2016 with Antonius Clayton and Tyree Cleveland. So with all of this, the Gators shot up in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings to 11th. 23 commits and signees right now. They're at the 85 scholarship limit if you want to count those right now. So I would expect some transfers or some defections of some sort coming up. Florida would definitely like to take cornerback Kyer Elam right now. Also trying to reel in playmaker Mark Anthony Richards. Of course, go out there and try and get a defensive tackle, defensive lineman out there as well. So definitely want to try and get about 3 more guys into this class when it's all said and done. If not more, if they can figure out the number situation. So also the Gators may elect to bring in Louisville grad transfer Jonathan Greenard at defensive end. So they definitely have their work cut out for them in the numbers department to try and fit these guys in. So be on the lookout for some transfers in the coming weeks. I don't want to really speculate on who that could be right now. I don't think it's fair to those guys to go out there and say they should be leaving this program and all that. I do like to keep it real in here, but I also kind of keep it respectful at the same time as well. So, if it comes down to it, realization is realization. But I don't want to throw out there guys who should be leaving the Florida program. I don't think it's right to kind of be doing that. So we'll talk about it if they decide to move on. But I won't really discuss that point until then. But before we move on, also players at All-American games this past week, and the ones that were Gators showed out. The ones that we already know were going to be some Gators garnered rave reviews, and starting with tight end Keon Zipperer, and then also defensive end linebacker Muhammad Diabate, and also Tyron Hopper, and also good 2020 quarterback commit Anthony Richardson got some love in the All-American Bowl Combine, as well as Jaquavion Frazier's at the wide receiver position. So, like it should be, Gators are showing out at these All-Star games, have more of a presence at these All-Star games, getting commitment showing out. And that's what we expect. It's what we expect as Gators. It's what we expect from the players that want to be Gators. We want to see them on national TV. We want to see them committing on national TV. We want to see these big-time targets when they make their commitment and that Gator hat from the table to pick the Gators. Yes, of course, Florida missed out on a few guys as well, Boggle and Stevenson, and we knew they weren't coming to Florida anyway. But, still, when it comes around to it, you want to keep these big-time Florida playmakers in the state. And this was a nice start in Dan Mullen's first full cycle. We're starting to see that more national presence, and the Gators being the pick, and the guys who are already Gators out there making plays. All right, so let's go on to Gators who could be coming back and Gators who could be leaving. And, of course, we'll start with the guys who decided to come back. And then we'll get with the guys who decided to make their NFL decisions as well. And I'll read some of the messages here that these guys left. So it'd be we'll hear from what the guys who decided to come back. Read their messages and maybe why they decided to come back. But running back LaMichael Pirine, wide receiver Van Jefferson, wide receiver Tyree Cleveland, defensive end Jabari Zuniga, defensive lineman Adam Schuler, linebacker David Reese, all announced. They're coming back, and most of those did those on Friday and Saturday there. So let's start with LaMichael Pirine. Gator Nation. It's been an amazing 3 years. Last week's win in the Peach Bowl was just the start of things to come for this program. It's amazing how things come full circle. Being that the first offer I received was from Coach Mullen, he has believed in me since early in my recruiting process back in high school. I ultimately chose Florida because of the opportunity to earn my degree from a top 10 institution and play for championships. With Coach Mullen, we are now in a position to play for championships at UF. Despite all the success we had this past season, I think we all know that we have some unfinished business. With that said, I'll be returning for my senior season for one last ride with my brothers and this coaching staff. Let's go to work, LP. And look, LaMichael Pirine paid for his own way to get to Gainesville when he was being recruited. He loves being a Gator. Yes, this was one that was kind of up in the air later in the week, but I kept thinking to myself, when it was all said and done, LaMichael Pirine loves being a Florida Gator. And I thought he would come back. There was some doubt there because look at the way he ended the season. And he really raised the draft stock later on in the season with the really good South Carolina, FSU, and bowl game against Michigan. So, good for Pirine wanting to come back. And getting some mojo ready for the Gators here. Also now, Van Jefferson, a little bit of a lengthier here message from him. Made it out to Coach Mullen. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity in becoming a part of the University of Florida's football team. After making the decision and choosing to become part of Gator Nation, I instantly felt at home. I felt like it was where I was supposed to be. As a transfer student, I met guys on the team that quickly became more than teammates, but brothers. Coach, you told me that you wanted to get Gators football back to where it was or where it needs to be. You expressed many times the desire to restore the Gator standard, the culture, and I'm so thankful to have been a part of the success thus far. Knowing this, I decided to continue the process of restoring the Gator standard alongside my brothers for another year. This will allow me to earn my degree, hone my skills, and become a better player and a better man. God has and still is answering my prayers. I'm truly thankful. Gators, let's get it. Chomp, chomp. Thankfully, Van Jefferson. And it continued. Saturday, Jabbar Zuniga announces Gator Nation. After much discussion with my mom and our coaching staff, I plan to return for my senior season. 2018 was an incredible year on and off the field. As much success as we've had on the field, I had just as much off of it. With that, I'm excited to return this fall to finish my degree and play for a national championship. The sky's the limit for this program, and I'm excited to be part of it for one last ride. Zoo. And Adam Schuler, a lot of confusion if he was going to come back or not. He had a tweet earlier in the week that kind of made people think he might be leaving, but the transfer from West Virginia decides to come back, and he letters out here. Dear Gator Nation, my best decision in life so far was choosing to transfer to the University of Florida. Thanks to Coach Dan Mullen, I was blessed with the opportunity to continue my athletic and educational career with my childhood favorite team, the Florida Gators. Over a short period of time, I've made many lifelong relationships since arriving on campus this past fall. Also, I've been shown nothing but love from my teammates, coaches, training staff, and academic personnel along the way. It's been a great, hard-fought season to bring our Gator standard back along with getting the program back to a championship level of competition. Although presented with the opportunity to declare for the NFL draft, after a long decision process with God and my family, I feel that it is best for my future athletic endeavors to return for my senior season at the University of Florida. I look forward to improving upon my athletic abilities this coming season and continuing to return to raise the Gator standard in the swamp. Go Gators. And here we go. David Reese. Also, that was another one. I didn't think he was going to go. I didn't think there was much question if he was going to go, but I'm sure he tested the waters, got his test grades back, and decided to announce also on Saturday that he would be returning. David Reese says, Gator Nation, it was always a dream of mine to play for the Florida Gators, compete for national championships, then go on to play in the league. In my time here, I have made countless relationships that will last a lifetime. I want to thank Coach Mullen and this staff for bringing the Gator standard back to the swamp. This past year has sparked a dream that has always lived in me. With that being said, I cannot bring myself to leave what is happening at the University of Florida. After much discussion with God and my family, I feel like it is in my best interest to return for one last ride. We are just getting started, and I have unfinished business. David Reese. And then on Friday, it started there with Tyree Cleveland announcing that he was coming back. And Tyree Cleveland says, my goal since I was a little kid to one day make it to the NFL. After looking at the pros and cons, I decided to come back for my senior year. I will use this year to mature and better myself as a person and a player. And I'll also use this year to work on getting my degree, which is very important to me. Personally, I still want to accomplish goals I set for myself and for the team. This was a tough decision, but I feel like this is the best decision for me and my family. I trust God and the plans he has for me. I will commit myself fully to my teammates and coaches and be a leader for this 2019 team. To Gator Nation, we have unfinished business. Sincerely, Cleve. So there you go. A lot of heartfelt messages there from the players who decided to come back. Nothing against the guys that left. I'll get to them. But you got to respect these guys who could have left. Some of them probably didn't need to leave. They needed to come back and improve their stock. They admitted it. They said it here in these messages. And I mean, good on these guys. Florida, needed some of these guys to return, and you caught the message there of bringing back the Gator standard, and Mullen bringing back the Gator standard. He has these guys excited to play, excited to return, excited to keep winning as a Gator. And look, as much fun as we had as fans, those players had a lot of fun too, especially keep going back to what they had, everything they had to deal with last year, not only just winning 4 games, but all the off-field issues of Jim McElwain and all the shark stuff and the death threats and your coach getting fired and not knowing who the new coach was going to be and whether you fit into it. And Dan Mullen came in here, set a standard from day one. Said that offseason was going to be one of the hardest off seasons they've ever had. They bought in, and they bought in enough to bring this Gator team and the Gator standard back to a 10-win season. So what are the Gators losing here or bringing back here? What are the Gators getting back in these players coming back? And in Perine, you're getting the leading rusher of the team back. 826 yards, average 6.2 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns, 63.5 yards per game. Splitting time with Jordan Scarlett and Damian Pierce early in the season there. And we all, like I said, go back and remember the way he ended the season. There was some big runs versus FSU, big runs versus Michigan to ice that game away. The FSU game was the first touchdown of the game, kind of set the tone of that game a little bit. Lamichael Perine, if you go back before the season started, and we kind of were naming superlatives, I think it was an episode Will and I did, and kind of labeling some of the Gator players, and I called Lamichael Perine, and this was partly because of me as well, one of the least respected players on the team. And I don't think we'll label him that anymore. I saw a lot of people out there on Twitter yesterday very, very happy Lamichael Perine's coming back and very cognizant of the importance of what he brings to the table now. He's gotten better every season. He's been a Gator and looking to improve his stock when he comes back next year. In Van Jefferson, you're getting back the leading wide receiver. 35 receptions, 503 yards, 14.4 yards per catch. Led the wide receivers with 6 touchdowns. He was the best wide receiver from the spring when he came in. We all remember the reports from the open practices. We saw him at the open practices through fall camp. Through the season, he was the best wide receiver on the team. So hopefully next year, Felipe Franks can get a little better, a little more consistent, and that helps somebody like Van Jefferson, who was probably looking when he come into this year being his only season at the University of Florida. But, we kind of knew the limitations of Felipe Franks, and if he was going to be better, how much better, and definitely got better as the season went on. But this is, for Dan Mullen, this is still a kind of run-heavy, run-first offense. So, I think Van Jefferson did a service for him and, the team and Felipe Franks by coming back one more year and getting it done. I do expect, there's not a fault necessarily his, but maybe some better stats next year as Felipe Franks gets better in the offense as well. So on the other side, Florida needed some defensive linemen to come back after Ja'Kai Polite declared. So Jabari Zuniga brings back 45 tackles, 11 tackles for loss. That was second on the team behind Polite there, and 6.5 sacks, only behind Ja'Kai Polite's 11 sacks. And linebacker David Reese, didn't lead the team in tackles this season like he did last season, but still had a good season. 77 tackles, only behind Fasan Joseph's 93. So if Reese plays that first game, we'll see a little bit closer, but we know he missed the first game. Wasn't really needed for that Charleston Southern game, and we'll see. He had 2.5 tackles for loss. I think more importantly for Reese is big for the leadership of this team, big for his leadership to return onto the field with a leader like CeCe Jefferson graduating. So, and also going from Jeff Collins' defense to Randy Shannon's defense to Grantham's defense, it'd be good to see David Reese perform. And a lot of these guys are returning who are in the same situation, seeing these guys perform in the same defense for the second season in a row. Like I said, it's been Jeff Collins, Randy Shannon, and now Todd Grantham. And now they finally get to reap the rewards of being in a defense for another year and another year in a row. Adam Schuler, the graduate transfer from West Virginia, and he was eligible to play right away for Florida this year. And what a difference he made on the inside of that line, because the season started TJ Slayton, and Elijah Conliffe in there. And we really expected a lot of those guys and the highly recruited guys. And maybe they'll eventually get there. I kind of think the season hopefully is not an indicator of what we see from those guys in the future. So disappointing showings from those guys. And Schuler was needed in his 10 games where he garnered 39 tackles and 3.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 5 quarterbacks hurries while forcing a fumble there. So good to see that he gets to come back too, because Florida is a little short of that defensive tackle position there with experience and proven playmakers. And Adam Schuler, Tennessee game, the Michigan game, really showed out in those 2 games. So hopefully he gets some more playing time, a little more consistency there, and see some big numbers out of Schuler next season. And Tyree Cleveland comes back after, he didn't have the production we thought he might have, but a lot of that is Florida just spreads the ball around a good bit. You look at running back, spread carries there. Look at wide receivers, spread the catches out there. And we know the big play potential of Cleveland. We saw that the year before last in his freshman season a little bit as well, but just couldn't really get it going this season. So, he's coming back. Maybe can have the season like we know he can have with the big play potential, and hopefully maybe improve on his 18 catch, 212 yards, and 3 touchdowns this past season. So, of course, also, guys, we have players declaring as well. Not a bad sign. It can be looked at as a positive as well. So, we'll take a look back at those players that decided to leave early. Junior offensive tackle Jawan Taylor announced that he was turning pro right after the Peach Bowl last week. Then last Monday, the biggest playmaker on the defense, junior defensive end Ja'Kai Polite, also announced his declaration for the NFL. Wednesday came, and running back Jordan Scarlett and linebacker Vashawn Joseph said they were going to turn pro. So those 4, along with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who we already knew going, just soon after the FSU game, we knew he was going to turn pro, and what a showing he had in his last game at the Peach Bowl. While we would like to have seen those guys stay, it's also a good sign when players are declaring early. A lot of recruits don't see themselves as 4-year players anymore. So, they have all these aspirations of 3 years and going to the league. It rarely is that easy, but, it is a selling points to recruits that guys can come to Florida, have a good career, play for Dan Mullen, and win, and perhaps leave in 3 seasons. So, with that said, the production from a couple of these players will be tough. We're replacing, starting with Ja'Kai Polite and his 17.5 tackles for loss, 11 sacks, 6 forced fumbles. Can players like Zuniga and Jeremiah Moon and some others step into that role there to kind of – because, look, that was a surprise. We all pinpointed Ja'Kai Polite as the potential guy, the guy who had the tools. I still don't think we thought he could be this good. We expected CeCe Jefferson to kind of fill in that role a little bit, and didn't necessarily happen. CeCe Jefferson was a steady type of player, set the edge a good bit. Not a lot of the big time plays that you saw from Ja'Kai Polite, but was a big. To me, it was a big surprise the way Polite came out and showed out the way he did. The potential was there. I just still don't think we thought 17.5 tackles for loss and 11 sacks. that was elite numbers there, and set himself up to go to the NFL. And also the another big time playmaker on the defense, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, his 71 tackles. That was 3rd on the team, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 4 interceptions on the season, all over the field making plays. So now what? Maybe Amari Burney or Trey Dean will fill that spot and be that versatile playmaker we saw from Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. We'll see Burney's a little more versatile. We've seen him at linebacker. We've seen him at safety. We've seen him at that star position that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson plays, playing some nickel as well. Trey Dean has mentioned that he'll play nickel or wants to play nickel next year. So good that Florida has these versatile guys, can play corner, can play nickel, can play linebacker, can play safety. Those are the type of playmakers that Todd Grantham was looking for. And so we'll see with Chauncey Gardner and his numbers going away if Amari Burney, Trey Dean, those guys can bring something similar. Maybe the biggest surprise of the bunch was linebacker Vashawn Joseph declaring, led the team in tackles with 93, 9 of those for loss and 4 sacks. up and down year with the LSU game being the Vashawn Joseph show. We've known, he's feast or famine type of player, very fast player that was too aggressive at times, very up and down in pass coverage. So who can we look at there? James Houston, Ventrell Miller are two to look out for and filling in there to go along with David Reese and how that linebacker core shakes out there. So, maybe not a huge miss there, but I still think his speed at times will be missed. But all in all, I think a pretty replaceable player there, Vashawn Joseph. But, between those guys, Ja'Kai Polite, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Vashawn Joseph, the Gators will be losing 35.5 tackles for loss. Those guys were three of the top four in that category to go along with Zuniga's 11 there. So you're looking at guys who made plays behind the line of scrimmage, made turnovers happen. So that's what Florida's going to have to find, and that's what Todd Grantham's defense is built off of. A lot of pressure, a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage, and get turnovers off of that. So can they replicate that with some of the players on the roster to replace what Polite, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Vashawn Joseph was able to do? If you move on to offense, and with Jordan Scarlett, you have to replace stats very similar to LaMichael Piron's 131 carries, 776 yards, 5.9 yard average, about 6 yards carry, 5 touchdowns on the season, only 59.7 yards per game there. Not eye-popping stats, but Mullen did a good job splitting carries, and especially early on in the season. Damian Pierce, who would now be running back number 2, was getting more carries earlier in the season. Felipe Franks was getting more carries as the year went on as well, taking away carries from the running back. So that also helped. That helped lead Scarlett and Piron being so fresh later in the season, and you saw how both were issues for defenses they faced later in the season. So Florida will be fine at running back, and that's not to slam on Jordan Scarlett. Florida's recruited well there, and they split the ball up pretty well. So you will have Piron, you'll have Damian Pierce, Iverson Clement, Naquan Wright. There's your 4 right there who will be making some plays for the Gators next year from the running back position, and good for that. Led by Piron, I will be interested to see when 2019 season's over. If you look at Piron and Pierce, Malik Davis could throw in there as well if he can come back and bounce back healthy. I don't know how I forgot him. You guys know how I feel about him if you follow this podcast. So hopefully Malik Davis can come back and be that playmaker that we know he can be if he can just stay healthy here. But I will be interested how the numbers, because it was pretty much kind of past. Starting around the LSU game, maybe Mississippi State LSU game, where it became the Piron and Scarlett show, and then Pierce wasn't so much of a factor as he was early on in the season. I'll love to look at the stats in 2019 to see how it is. Will it be the Piron and Pierce show like it was this year with Scarlett and Piron, and then everybody else, or will we see more Piron being the bell cow and Pierce, Davis, Clement, Wright kind of splitting carries, or will it be 3 guys splitting carries? That's Florida's got numbers there, so we'll see. Maybe Wright is redshirted when it's all said and done there. So I don't know. I'd be interested to see how this running back room situates itself out for the 2019 season. Lastly, would have loved to seen offensive lineman, offensive tackle Jawan Taylor stay with the seniors, Martez Ivy, Tyler Jordan, and Fred Johnson on the offensive line, graduating and going. But look, he shot up the draft boards this season. You can't blame him there. So now the Gators will have 1 starter in center Nick Buchanan returning to the offensive line for next season, along with Brett Heggie, who has a lot of experience the last 2 seasons, but trouble staying healthy. Right now, if you're looking at it, quick look, left or right, offensive line, I think you have Richard Garage or Chris Blight there at left tackle, Brett Heggie left guard, Nick Buchanan at center, of course, Noah Banks at right guard, and Stone Forsythe probably at right tackle there. We'll see, Garage, Blight, Forsythe, how that tackle rotation works out, I think, between the 3 of those. So that's definitely what to look out for. Spring practice rolls around. We'll see how that goes. So there you have it. Busy few days for the Gators off the field with all these decisions. Dreams coming true for Gator players, and you can tell they all enjoyed this past season and bringing back the Gator standard. We owe a lot of fun to these players for this past season. And I think you could really, really tell, especially you go back and look at the Peach Bowl and how much fun that those guys had after and celebrating. Go back to I was really, really close to those players on the field and celebrating in Tallahassee the win over the Seminoles and how much fun they were having there as well. This season meant a lot to Gator Nation, and when I say Gator Nation, players, coaches, fans. It was a whole lot of fun. So, and you could tell there. So dreams being made, either becoming a Gator, returning as a Gator, or NFL dreams after being a Gator. Dreams being made here. And that's why I had to do an episode. It's a lot of news going on, a lot of stuff happening, and I think you followers and listeners and fans out there deserved an episode to kind of get through the next couple of days before Will and I get back together on Tuesday. I was probably do episodes on Monday, but didn't want to go head to head with the national championship game, of course, between Clemson and Alabama. So. I read a couple of tweets you guys sent when kind of threw out the summary of what everything happened the last few days for the Gators here. Well, there we go. The best part about these guys returning, and this is the Faceless Man has sent this to me. The best part about these guys returning is it gives Mullen more time to recruit and develop players he recruited without having to rely on them too early. That's a really, really good point. And also, we also looked at, going back to this past season, and also looked at this new redshirt rule, how that worked into things, and getting young guys some playing time. And I think it was important that Damian Pierce got a lot of playing time. Emory Jones got his feet wet. Some of the freshman offensive linemen got into some of the blowout games as well. So, we'll kind of see how it all plays out. But, yeah, these guys returning. Mullen's not forced, and especially at the quarterback position. They're not necessary. You're not forced to throw anybody out there before they're ready. So, quarterback room is deep. You'll have Felipe Franks, Emory Jones. We'll see what happens with quarterbacks like Kyle Trask, and maybe whether he decides to leave or stay or go on. You'll have Jalen Jones in now. You're not forced to throw a young quarterback in there before they're ready with the way things have turned out with Felipe Franks. You weren't forced to throw Emory Jones in there this year. You won't be forced to throw Jalen Jones out there next year unless, God forbid, some injuries happen or something. So we'll see how it all turns out. But yeah, you don't necessarily have to force players in there now. Hey, with all the good news for the Gators, look, Florida had some players leave as well. But Grateful Gator Pod sends his thoughts here. Coupled with Fields, Holyfield, Hardman, and Nada leaving early for UGA. Great couple of days all around for the Gators. And, yeah, there you go. For Georgia had some players leave early and guys that will make a big impact. We all know the Justin Fields story, now transferring and going to be enrolled at Ohio State. Holyfield leaving, Hardman, big playmaker for Georgia. And Nada, we saw the things he was able to do. Very underutilized at Georgia, but what he was able to do against Florida this past year. Jessica B at JessBest05 says, I said it's great to be a Florida Gator. I love how these players have bought in so much. They want to see it through to the end and believe they have unfinished business. And that was the common theme there when I read those messages. Unfinished business. Coming back and look, I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Inigo who said it when I was reading here, but somebody said even went all the way and said, come back and play for a national championship. And look, that's the expectation. That's the expectation that we want of being Gators. And look, is it a failure if they don't get there? No. I mean, come on. They're still early in the tenure, but that's good. That's the expectation. That's what we want players to go out there and see. That's their goal. Go win the SEC. Go play in the playoffs. Go get a national championship trophy. And you need some players to come back and help along that way. And these guys coming back can go a long way and maybe making that a reality. Hunter Algans says this next year and offseason will be the hardest Felipe will ever go through. The pressure is on. Let's see. Going to challenge for the East next year. This is some dude 44. Going to challenge for the East next year. Top 10, possible top 5 team. That's kind of what Will and I will hit on later on this week. We'll see where the Gators finish in the final polls and kind of look ahead to maybe where the Gators may be ranked going into next season. But, yeah, I mean, Florida challenged for the East this year. And with what Georgia lost and, some of the things they have going on there and everything that returned for Florida this year. Get that offensive line gelling pretty quick. The sky is the limit for these Gators, I think. And also maybe Felipe Franks taking another big step forward. A few questions on, like I mentioned, those playmakers on defense that you've got to replace and the stats that they brought to the table. But Florida should be easily a top 10 team, hopefully pushing for a top 5, and maybe things even bigger. Kyle Snyder's so great having Schuler, Grimes, Jefferson back last year was a huge bump. Now all back plus some grad transfers on D line. Very positive. Maybe linebacker or probably defensive lineman. He probably means there. Maybe D line or offensive line grad transfer. And Delaware's Seminole says the returns are good for keeping momentum. And that's part of it. Like I said, go back to the Peach Bowl. And then you had some guys deflect and decide to go to the NFL. As I said, I don't think that's a bad thing. You can use that and spin that as a positive. But then all these guys coming back, you had the commitments from Henderson and Steele. Gator Nation feels good right now. Gator Nation feels good right now. So, yeah, as I mentioned, thanks for all those tweets, guys. Thanks for all the feedback. Saturday was a busy, fun day covering all the happenings that were happening around Gator Nation. As I did mention, Will and I we'll still have our episode on Tuesday night, talking more Gators. There's always plenty to talk about. It is funny. I planned on only one episode. I should have known better. I should have known better with everything that could have happened this past weekend. No problem throwing in an extra episode for you guys out there and getting the Gator brand and message out there, some positivity out there for Gator Nation. So that'll do it for this episode. We'll have the national championship game to discuss around there on social media. So, guys, we'll tune into that for the last college football game of the season, Clemson and Alabama. So we can watch that from a Gator fan's perspective there. So football season will be over and not much more on-field action till the spring rolls around. But Gators Breakdown will be here every step of the way for about, like I said, one episode a week until next fall, until something else big happens. And look, we'll be here following all the way. So I'm David Waters, host of Gators Breakdown. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.